Welcome to my workbench. As I've just switched over all the guts to a new frame on this RealAcc x210, I thought I'd take a moment and give it a good detailed review with y'all. And I'm actually going to show you my setup in Betaflight. Now for perspective, I've only been flying for about 4 months, and I've only been flying well for maybe a month or two, if you want to call it that. So I am a relatively new person at this. If I get anything wrong, or if you have any other recommendations you'd suggest, please leave them in the comments, because I'm still trying to learn all this stuff. So let's go top down on the hardware, and then we'll switch over and show you the setup on here. So from the very top, you can see I have a Hero 3 Plus, and all of my HD footage you've seen posted on my channel come out of this. It's fairly heavy, and it was a problem with the previous frame I had. The RealAcc x210 frame, if you look at a previous video, you'll see it just was very weak, and it broke. So I have transferred everything over into this new V Plus frame. And one of the really cool things, I think, is that you can adjust the angle of your HD camera mount by sliding that up and down and tightening it. So if you have a really drastic, crazy angle, like getting up in the 50 plus degrees, you can make sure that your HD camera picks up everything that you're seeing in your FPV. So moving down, my FPV setup, I have a new camera in here that I was trying out as well. I'm really happy with it. It's a Runcam Eagle 2.1 lens. And this 2.1 lens, as compared to the 2.8 that I was using previously, which is just, I think it's a Runcam, just a standard, maybe a Swift, doesn't, oh yeah, Runcam Swift. This had a 2.8 millimeter lens, and it just felt a little bit confining. This 2.1 is amazing, and there's virtually no distortion. Now, when I tested it indoors, you do see just a touch of, of curve on your door frames and things like that are a bit away. But as far as flying around, I didn't feel like it was a fisheye or a fishbowl situation. And I felt much more comfortable, and I'll show you the flight at the end of this video, one of my better ones from the other day. I just felt much more comfortable getting into tight spaces because I felt like I could see around me. I believe this is 120 degree on that. So very happy with that. Now for transmission, I'm using an Eachine 25 200 600 choice transmitter. I've been really happy with the Eachine transmission items or transmitters. I've had a variety of them. They've all worked well for me, so I continue to buy them off Banggood. And then I just have a really cheap, I had this laying around. This is not a very good antenna. I have some blue Aomway on order, which I'd prefer. Now, moving down into the stack, my receiver is a broken XSR. You've seen this in other videos. It's only got one antenna, but it's working fine. I've been able to fly this to the limits of FPV transmission on 200 milliwatt, and no problems with my RSSI signal. No warnings from the Tyrannus. Now let me talk about the stack for a second here, because I've seen on YouTube that some people have had challenges getting their stack to fit, and then still allowing for their FPV camera to have some tilt. Now the way I have mine set up, and it fits fine, but it barely fits. Let me see if you can see this. I have the plastic bolts, or the nylon bolts, then I have a nylon washer, then I have my PDB, then I have the nylon spacer, and then I have the flight controller, and it's soft mounted on both sides with silicone O-rings, which I get from my shocks from my RC cars. And then lastly, there is a nylon washer on the top. Now these nylon washers have barely any threads to grab on, so I do recommend putting a little bit of rubber cement in right on the top of the thread before you screw it in. Do not use super glue, and definitely do not use blue Loctite. Rubber cement will help keep those on, or just check them all the time. They kept coming loose on me until I did that. This is an SP F3 racing board, which I'm really happy with. I've liked the Naze 32s as well. I haven't gotten into any F4 boards. I mentioned in another video I really like the Lumineer version 1. And I'm going to go with that in the future, simply because it's so easy to solder. But as far as performance, this has been a great board for me. I've been very happy with it, no problems, and the soft mounting may be one of the things that's helping me there. Now, going down the arms, these are 30 amp ESCs. Sorry that the paper ripped off when I took the electrical tape off from the other frame, but they're 30 amps. And the cool thing is they come with soldering tabs. They don't have wires connected, so it's really easy to solder. I was very happy with that. And then out on the end of the arms, powering this sucker are 2205 2600 kV motors. Now these guys are extremely powerful. They do eat a bit of amps. I typically get 4 minutes max flight, and my batteries are coming down a little warm. And I'm not really mashing on it extremely hard. I'm still relatively cautious for the most part. Now lastly, let me talk about something that is not on the frame that was included, and that's the lighting system. I've got a basic just blue set of LEDs here. Now I made a mistake. It comes with this pretty cool little light kit which you can actually plug into your 5th or 6th channel and use to show if you're turning right or left, and you can set all that stuff up in Betaflight. I wasn't going to do that. I just wanted to have the lights on the back, and it looks pretty cool, and I was going to manually change them. You know, whatever color the props were, I'd just make the lights the same color. Well, I wasn't paying attention, and I just used these power cords that I already had. Well, this thing runs off battery power, and the lights that come with the V Plus frame kit are 5 volt. So as soon as I plugged it in, I assumed everything would be fine because it was all working before. The lights sparked out and I got some magic smoke out of the lights. Fortunately, that's all it was. Those are in the bin now, but just a word of a word of warning. Do not use battery power to run the lights that are included. Make sure you've got a 5 volt buffered power system. So all that said, the hardware, I've really enjoyed this thing. It's worked very well for me, and with this new frame, I think it probably weighs about, I don't know, 15 grams more because of the additional hardware up around the HD mounting system. But I'm okay with that. This frame is so light to start with that a little extra weight is not a bad thing for me. It actually feels like it drops a little faster. It doesn't quite hang in the air as long. And to me, that's a benefit because it's not as slow to drop as it used to be. Last thing I'll cover are my batteries. I have been using these Tattoo 75C. Probably not really 75C, but that's what they claim, 1300 milliamp, and I get about 4 minutes out of these. They do come down warm, not hot, but warm. And these, I mean, this particular battery here has probably had 30 plus flights on it, and there's not a bit of puffing. Now, I am very nice to my batteries. I cycle them through once or twice, at least when I get them new. I never get them down below like 3.6, and typically store them at around 3.8. So I'm pretty nice to these guys, but they do last a while. They're only about 25 bucks. You can get them on Amazon Prime, so you pretty much get them next day. All right, so let's hook this sucker up, and I'm going to hope that this shows up. Turn my overheads off. Now again, before I get into my configuration here on Betaflight, I want to remind you all that I am relatively new. So there may be some things here that you find egregious. And if you do, blame them on Joshua Bardwell. Because everything I learned from Josh. Thank you, Josh. That joke at your expense is actually a backhanded compliment. All right, let's see if we can get this in frame. Now, I hope this shows up. We'll see. Now, a couple things to bear in mind when you're doing PID tuning, from what I've learned. Because this is a true X frame, it's not going to really show against the computer, but this quad is a true X. It's the same distance front to back, side to side. So what you'll see is my P, my I, and my D are pretty much identical across those axes. If I were to have a squashed X or a stretched X or an H frame, a lot of times you'll see the pitch, you have to have that higher than the roll. Again, this is my perspective and what I've learned. This copter also is balanced top to bottom as well, because it's got the heavy FPV camera on top and then it has the battery on the bottom. So it's a very balanced frame setup, both in weight distribution and shape, which is why you see this virtually identical PI and D across pitch roll. Now, y'all, I've cranked up to a 105. I'm not sure if this shows. So it's 72, 72, and 105 on my Ps. I really like that yaw being high. Thank you again, Josh. You showed me that by cranking the yaw, it actually feels like it doesn't skid out or drift out in the corners. I've really appreciated that aspect. Now running my P's up at 70, I know is kind of pushing it, but I've got extremely high RPMs on these, and at the low throttle, it seems to work well. And then I'll show you my TPA in a minute to help keep some of the shivering and oscillation out of the higher RPMs. Now for my eye, I'm running 55, 55, and 47 for the yaw. Now it still feels a little stiff. I'm going to probably bring the eye down after a couple more flights, 50 maybe. But there's an aspect to it of the stiffness I like, because previously all of my quads felt so loosey-goosey. I kind of, I guess I've jumped to the other end of the spectrum, and I really have liked the stiffness. But now I'm trying to take a little bit of stiffness out so that my movements are a little smoother and less, jerky. D, I'm running at 52, and the reason I'm able to run that relatively high, as you may know, is because these are nice motors and good ESCs. They come down cold. As soon as I started getting over the 45 when I was testing D, I was checking these every flight, and I have yet to even feel the slightest bit of warmth in these. So derivative's pretty high at 52, but it flies very well for me. Now, as far as my rates, I've left the super rates where they are, and I've increased my RC rate to get my overall spin rates at around 900 degrees per second. I have a little bit more on the yaw because it's just hard for me to move the left stick all that well, so I like having a little bit more authority on the yaw, but it's not much. And then I have Expo. I've just bumped this up from 25 and 20 to 27 and 22. Recently reviewing some of my footage, there's just still a bit of jerkiness, and I want to smooth out some of those small movements that I'm making. So those are my overall setups. For this particular copter, I did have to go add TPA, and the reason is these high RPM motors, I was noticing, and if you look back in my videos from about 3 or 4 weeks ago, you'll see in the HD video that the copter will shake once it gets up to mid to high throttle. When I do big punch outs and everything, the whole copter would just be shaking. And this is my morning coffee, so I guess my copter had too much caffeine like me. So I have the TPA set at 14. I had it at 15, and it was just a little, maybe too much, so I just took it down a touch. And my breakpoint's at 1600. So that has seemed to work. The recent videos I've put up seems to be a lot less shaking. But there is something I'm seeing at I don't know, it's like low throttle. I think it's right where the breakpoint's happening, where every once in a while, if I hold just in the right, like bottom third of the throttle, just above hover, I'll see it vibrate just a little bit in the overall copter. So tuning, as most of you know, is a constant process of testing, but right now I'm quite happy with this setup. It's worked well for me. I'm bringing the eyes down a little bit to free it up. I've brought the D's up because I realize that these motors are cold. Remember, if you don't have an X frame, this setup's probably not going to work all that great for you. By example, this QAV 180 has a very small measurement on a Squash X, plus it carries a lot of weight down the center, so you're going to see some variation in your pitch and your roll axis in your PIDs as compared to the true X that I'm currently flying. So just keep that in mind. Again, please go check out Josh Bardwell's channel. His explanation of PIDs, how to set them up. He's got a series of videos from a while back that show him going through his entire tuning process. And just recently he's posted up some excellent masterclass videos. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. If you're interested in the RealAcc x210, I highly advise it. This thing is a great flying copter. I do like its upgraded frame because I can actually maneuver and change the angle of the HD camera mount. Plus it's a lot more robust, and after just doing a couple somersaults landing, it's been fine. So if you're interested in getting a really good copter at a relatively inexpensive price, check out the RealAcc x210. And I do highly recommend these RunCam Eagle 2.1 FPV cameras. This has been a lot of fun to change and upgrade from the 2.8. All right, we'll see y'all up in the air.